Welcome to the Creative Entrepreneur Show. What do we have this week, Brian?
Hey, Rosh, happy to be here. We are two creative guys talking AI, and I'm excited to talk about just the way that I interact with AI in general is changing, and it's changing quickly. So I want to go into some details on that, and then also a client that is I'd say a more demanding client than most, one that we share. We can be on the same page there. I used AI this week to really knock it out of the park with a good year over year, end of year presentation. So I want to talk about exactly how I did that. What do you have
Very
going on?
good. Well, currently we're in the first days of the 12 days of OpenAI, where OpenAI is updating and giving us something new every day. In the first day, they gave us ChatGPT o1. They took out the preview and gave us o1.
Okay.
And so that is available now.
Was that in a
And
pear tree? Did they give that in a pear tree?
No pear tree. Well, it's kind of a tree, and when they show it, but it's more of a Christmas tree.
Okay.
So,
I want to
um,
know what song they're going to create to go with these 12 days.
yeah.
That's just
So, I mean, there are a lot of things they're gonna offer us, and the next one is actually 10 minutes from when we're recording this, so we will not have that. But
oh,
there's another, obviously, 10 days or so coming at us, so we'll be able
very
to
cool.
probably recap and review in the
Yeah.
next show. So don't miss the next show. Um, and the one thing I think that for sure is coming out is the new browser. And we'll talk about that. But anyway, I'm getting into the details right now with when I should be waiting. So I'll get into more of the details of what's going on. I have some other information about OpenAI. Then my second one is open source, using open source and some ideas of how you can do that. Because a lot of these really cool AI creative stuff is open source.
Yeah.
So in other words, you have to put it together. So I'm gonna share how you can do that.
Very cool. All right. Appreciate it. So yeah, want to just I noticed in general how I'm interacting with AI, namely ChatGPT,
Hmm.
is changing drastically. So I mentioned a few weeks back how my Google Chrome browser that when I type something into the top bar, it defaults now to a ChatGPT search instead of
Right.
what was a Google search before. So I actually have to type Google if I want to get to Google, which is fine. And, I've gone back and forth on whether I want to keep that or not. And, I've just learned to adjust and really I like what it's able to provide me as an answer, even as ChatGPT is the default. So I'm staying there. But here's where some of the other big changes have come in. Um, are you an iPhone user, Rush?
No, actually, I'm Android.
Oh boy. Okay. All right. Well, maybe cover your ears here for a little bit, or you
Uh-oh.
might catch up. But no, that's all right. The phone companies essentially do what the other ones do if they're not doing it already. So, but the latest iPhone update just came out earlier this week, and I think it's like 18.0 or the latest user face interface, and it really updated some things in cool ways. So we've got on an iPhone, we've got this swipe down screen. I think on Android's that same thing. And the customizability maybe is the word of that has changed drastically. And I've actually now put a logo, the widget for GPT voice and just chat GPT right on my main swipe down screen.
Okay.
So it's now like 3 steps easier to open it up and get right
Yeah.
into it. And that's kind of it's becoming, just more a regular part of my, using my phone and how I get information from it.
Are you
But the
using more voice or are you texting more?
yeah, no, exactly. You read my mind on my next point here is that this past week I have converted almost 90 to 100% just using GPT voice.
Hmm.
And before I never really used it. I would sit there and talk to it to, write out a prompt and then put it in.
Yeah.
But talking to that little blue cloudy bubble now has become, it's just like you've got a know-it-all best friend in the room.
Yeah.
And in a good way, you can shut them up anytime you want to. I'm sure some people wouldn't mind doing that to me from time to time, but um so yeah, you can talk to it more, and I've really been impressed with its capabilities. So here's an example of me using it. My mom and stepdad moved in across the street, and they're kind of technologically adverse, maybe we'll say. And my stepdad sometimes he thinks that the world's out to get him. So he tells me that he goes to Walgreens and buys a half gallon of milk. It was marked at 2.79, but it rang up for 3.29.
Hmm.
And he's all mad about it. And I was like, well, did you get your $5 that you were owed? And he's like, what? And I was like, you don't know about the Michigan scanner law. So I just pulled out ChatGPT voice really quick and I said, hey, ChatGPT, would you be so kind to explain to my stepdad about the Michigan scanner law? And then boom, hopped right into it. And essentially to our audience, if you don't know, if you purchase something and it rings up higher than it's marked, you're owed the difference plus 10 times that difference, not to
Ooh,
exceed $5.
right, right,
So
right.
this was a 50-cent difference. He should have gotten $5 back from Walgreens. Instead, they just gave it to him at the lower price and told him, go along your way. And then they updated the price in the back. But, he's like, oh, they're out to scam me. I was like, no, it's just an employee that didn't mark something in their system. The six people who buy a half gallon of milk each week are, the 50 cents they're going to make isn't going to, you know, account to a scam. But anyway, I digress. That was a great way to show its capabilities really quick.
Yeah.
And I found that as I use it, it just kind of keeps talking, providing a ton of extra information, more than an answer would on ChatGPT. And it's kind of waiting for you to shut it up. And we've talked,
Yes.
and you've used it before, so
Oh
do
yeah,
you?
I'll talk to it all the way to the studio. Think of a topic. A lot of times it's coding stuff, and we're just back and forth for a half hour on the way to the studio. It's
Wow.
great.
All right, so you're having a full-on
Oh
conversation and
yeah,
developing
absolutely.
thoughts, and that's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. And that's what I'm realizing in my head. This is starting to click that like this is the future of what everyone's going to be used to, whether they've got a Tesla robot or a whatever in their home that's got, this coding in there to be able to communicate with an AI like this, or it's going to be, what our, what Alexa or, what these things are going to be down the road. But this is what our virtual assistants are going to
Yeah.
become. Is just a sounding board for ideas and say, hey, this is what I need to accomplish this week. How do we do this? And, to expand upon this point, I was alone chatting with it and talked all about my plans for holiday shopping. And that
Hmm.
way I could develop a really good plan for, stuff for my wife, stuff for my kids, stuff for my family. And I said, pretty much said, hey, start a shopping list, in my notes app.
Yep.
And, here's a list of all the people I need to buy for. Here's some information about each one of these people. And I want to keep my price range here. And I want standard ideas. I want outside the box ideas. And also, I want you to give me links and suggestions of where to buy all these things. And you just throw as many inquiries at it as possible while you're communicating. And it's just compiling this full list of things and ready to give you the answer.
Yeah. I've, you know, you have to remember that it has memory and you can
Yeah.
ask it to remember things. And I've done that. I've had conversations where I said, oh, I wanted to find a new API source for one of my projects. And we explored that. Sometimes we're talking philosophy, sometimes we're talking mathematics, sometimes we're talking coding, sometimes all sorts of things, but I don't always remember the things I want to remember. So I said, hey, remember this API when I ask later, this source. And it did. I said, it was 3 days later, what was that API that I wanted you to remember? And it showed me, it's like, oh, thank you. And then I went in and I'm using it now. I've actually bought it. And so
Great.
it can be really helpful to be your memory bank as well as
Yeah.
challenging your creativity. Uh,
Yeah.
you can, if you're looking for new ideas, sometimes you'll come up with a great idea in the process with the AI, but you're going to forget. So you just say, "Hey, just remember this for me later because I
Yeah.
don't want to forget this."
Well, even as you said this, I had an idea pop into my head as just being a songwriting partner for me and not
Sure.
not asking for lyrics, but just
Yeah.
asking to hold on to ideas.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. So very cool. But yeah, it's just I'm just noticing just changes in the way of how, we're interacting with AI and what we're getting from it, and it's just so exciting.
Yeah. Well, going on to my, are you done with your stuff? Yeah. So OpenAI announced that they now have 30 million users per
Woo.
week. And what's interesting about that is that this is normalizing, just like we're talking about, we're finding new ways to implement uh, AI in our everyday lives. And, you know, 30 million other people are doing the same thing. So this is not uh, is new or as strange as some people maybe thought of us a couple years ago. Now we know some different types of AIs out there for different types of creative tasks that maybe your average person doesn't know. But still, it's becoming a regular thing. But here's the interesting thing that I thought was very telling too. Although they have announced this high level of 30 million users per week, last year they were 50% of the usage. Now they're about 35% of the usage. So that means people are using more Claude and Gemini as well as other AIs out there. And I think that was really, really telling. And OpenAI is really pushing it. We're right in the middle of our, not in the middle, beginning of the shipness is what they would call it, shipping new things for OpenAI,
Yeah.
including the uh, the the new reasoning model, which is the O1. It was O1 preview, and
Mhm.
now it is just O1, and it's showing the metrics. It's a lot better, but they even have a better one, and that one is under the Pro account. That Pro account will give you full access, as much access as you want, and it will also give you the Pro version of O1 that is even better, but there is a monthly cost.
Okay.
And any idea what that monthly cost is if you haven't checked it out yet?
I might have seen it, and I don't know if I'm going to be making that investment.
Exactly.
Let's put it that.
$200 per month for the power users. And
Yeah.
so that was announced yesterday. They're just announcing right now. Maybe I'll take a look at it while you're in your segment. I'll see if I can find the new update. But they're talking about Sora. They're talking about new web clients like a competition for Chrome. So they have a whole list of things that are coming out over the next week, and so we can again recap that stuff in the next podcast. But one thing that I thought was really nice and highly valuable is the fact that you can now the vision is connected to O1 the O1 model, which means you can upload stuff, which is
Okay.
really important for a lot of
Yeah.
what we do. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just opened up my browser right now to see, and sure enough, there's O1, not the preview model. I've got my little attached file, so I'm excited to get in there and see, just what differentiation that this higher reasoning model has. But yeah, that's very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to some more information on Sora. Their runway has been great, but I really want to see what OpenAI can bring to the table with the video creation side of things. So, just a lot of different options. And, it's funny, I've working with, some similar clients that we work with together, they can tell when we're creating, AI-based imagery.
Right.
And it's motivated me to bounce around and not just use Dolly, to actually go in and try to have, and Gemini has actually become a big player in this image creation game of
Yeah.
realism.
Yeah.
And it's like they're
Google's
all just in a foot race. Yeah.
yeah, Google has some good stuff going on. And then there's a lot of independent ones out there,
Okay.
and including some of those open source ones, which I'll talk about in a moment. But yeah, hey,
Perfect.
get into your next one. What do you got?
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I used AI to have a really good year over year, but also 2025 marketing plan presentation. So now I didn't go fully in and use the actual presentation AI programs to where, they're actually making a PowerPoint for you. I'm still a little like, I wouldn't say scared, but I still need something tried and true to where I'm manipulating PowerPoint, the way I have been for the last 25 or 30 years. And, I just have a comfort with that, especially, with a shorter deadline before a meeting. But that doesn't mean I didn't use AI to help considerably with this presentation. So, with our creatives that are listening, this is the time of year where you often have these year-end meetings, or you've got to have a plan for next year. You've got to summarize what you did this year, and you've got to do it in a way that, matters to your client, and you've got to
Right.
make sure you're speaking their language. So at the very, very basic level, my PowerPoint for some reason is not hooked up with any sort of spell check. And I'm not the best speller in the world. So I will still run everything I put up there through my AI to make sure that things are spelled correctly. Because that's the
I've been
last thing.
doing that more and more with emails.
Yeah.
With if I'm going more than a few sentences and I really want to describe something, it's in
Yeah.
the I throw it in chat.com immediately.
Yep. Yeah, and it helps just to kind of rewrite things. And we have our own ways of writing things, and we assume that everybody understands what it is we're talking about. And we've mentioned in the past that having AI as a sounding board is really good. Just explain, and you can even explain to them a little bit about your client and their personality and their tendencies, and explain to it, the way that you want it to kind of twist some words and stuff. I don't mean, to be in a deceiving way, but just to word things in a way that is consumed well by your client. So, I used it for bullet points and concise language. So, oftentimes I get a little wordy with things and I want to, get that language and bullet points to be nice and short. Um, I used it for some imagery. So I did, just some abstract thinking of ideas and different things together. But here's really where it helped is I used it for stats and benchmarks.
Mm,
So, this client, he, very much cares about how he's doing versus the competition. And, that information would before have taken a good amount of Google searching and, sleuthing online. But, you could pretty much say, hey, my client is in this industry. These are the performance metrics that I'm doing. Please give me stats and benchmarks of how they're doing against their competition. And so in a way that's easily understandable, hey, that's great. Show me now create a chart that's going to, be a good visualization for this.
nice.
And, did all of that. It did really good data analysis to where I took screenshots of our year-end reports that we created internally. And, I uploaded a 6-page PDF and pretty much said, hey, give me a 1-page summary, a data analysis of this whole 8-page report, because I know that this client isn't going to sit through the 7 or 8 pages and wants 1 pages of the highlights.
Yeah,
So again, it was a way that I used AI to change my presentation to cater to the client. So, and most importantly, this is where the client was really fascinated was, and this is a little pitch here of the social media, and again what you do on your end with making sure that the back end, the websites and everything are correct, but information on GEO, generative engine optimization. That's easier
hmm.
for me to say.
It's not
Um,
easy to say at all.
no, there's a lot of words here, but so just giving information about how, what we're doing for them on social media is more relevant than ever. And
Hmm.
it was my way of being multimodal.
Yeah,
My modes that I used were an AI program and then a PowerPoint program and went back and forth. So, it was really cool to feel so confident going into this presentation, knowing that I've kind of knocked it out of the park, given that, I've had past presentations that have gone well, but this was far
nice.
beyond.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Excellent.
Yeah. Very, very good. Yeah. Throw back your way, whether or not, you've used that for any sort of presentations or you will in the future, or if you want to pop
I
into your.
will. The data side that you mentioned perked my ears. Like, hey, I want to present some stuff, what industry standards, benchmarks. I would, get them from the AI, but then I would double check their sources.
Yeah.
Depending on what it is that and who it is you're showing it to. But yeah, I think that's a good way to go, and then you can build off of that. And you're right, you certainly can make nice presentations with AI using that data. So
Mhm.
that's great. So, there again, if we mentioned, there's a lot of different programs out there. There is some new ones out there, Gizmo AI, World Labs, allows you to take an image and it'll create a 3D world out of it. I mean, there's
What?
some really unique stuff out there, but some of it's open source, and so in those situations, you need to either host it yourself, maybe using PyTorch or TensorFlow, Pytorch. I'm not as familiar with that, but I'm assuming that is a Python approach. And then I'm very familiar with TensorFlow. It's been around in the AI world for quite a while. And so that's something I knew of, years and years before I even knew what OpenAI was. So that model is the one I'm most familiar with, and you can locally host on your own server these different open source situations, or you can use an API in many cases, which basically you usually have to pay for, but it's usually not that expensive, but it's more expensive than hosting it yourself. And what you can do quite often, a lot of these open source new systems out there are hosted over at github.com. And if you're not
Mhm.
familiar with that, that's the place where a lot of coders will share their unique codes or their entire programs.
Wow.
Sometimes they'll save it for themselves. That's GITHUB hub github.com. It's been a standard for many, many years. And so you can keep your code private, but it's a place where you keep your code so you don't lose it. Is really what it comes down to, because what you'll
Yeah.
do is you'll pull your old code, refine it, combine code to create new things. And so you need a good storage place, and it's totally designed for that. But you can also make it public. And Google will share there, Microsoft will share there. I mean, a lot of different companies, big companies will share their open source information. And if you pull an API from there, you can take that code and it has all of it there and just plop it onto your own server, add your own API. Again, you just sign up for it and they'll give you a big long string of code that you kind of put in. Usually there's a little spot that says put your API code here and then you're off and running. There's often documentation with it, but it's a good way to dig in deeper, especially when you want to get into some of the really, really creative, unique stuff that's out there. That this is the way to go. So if you want to take it a step further, GitHub, open source, it's probably a good way to go to take your AI world a little deeper. So
Yeah. Well, we're very excited about that. And you talk about these projects and, the coding and, creating things that you've never created before, all the
absolutely,
time. And, I'm going to push you a little bit here, Rosh. I want you to start sharing some of these things with our audience. And, if, as long as it's not proprietary to a certain client or anything, but,
yeah, yeah,
I think we're going to make a newfound effort here in the new year to be, putting stuff up that, not just talking the talk, but showing everybody what we are truly creating.
yeah.
And, I know I've got a big year coming up with my band, and I'm going to be doing a lot of creative projects here in the lab using AI. And, I'll be forward about it when we post stuff that I have used AI technologies in this. But I hope that people respect more that, it's being done from a creative standpoint and not being just cheap. And also we're not a big budget band, so they shouldn't expect us to be spending thousands or tens of thousands
Right.
on videos and stuff. So let's pump the brakes there. But yeah, we're going to be in the new year, really an increased effort, whether it be on our Facebook channel or our YouTube channel, of sharing a lot more of what we're doing. And there might be an Easter egg hidden somewhere in one of our channels of an updated name and
Yeah.
branding and everything. So that's all we're gonna say now for that. But we got just there's a whole new increased effort coming in 25.
Absolutely. No matter what, we're going to show and help our creative community, entrepreneurial community, because we are just like you. Except we're two of us on this show because we're two creative guys talking AI.
All right, very good. We'll talk to y'all next week.